Ever wondered where the tradition of dressing up in costumes and asking for candy came from? Let's take a trip back in time about 2,000 years to the ancient Celtic lands of Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France. Here the Celts celebrated a festival known as Samhain. Pronounced Samhain, this festival marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, or what they considered to be the darker half of the year. It was a time of change and transition, and the Celts believed it was also a time when the boundaries between the living and the dead were blurred. Yes, you heard that right. The Celts believed that on the night of Samhain, the ghosts of the dead would return to Earth. These spirits were thought to damage crops and cause trouble, but they also made it easier for the Celtic priests or druids to make predictions about the future. For a people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort and direction during the long, dark winter. To commemorate this event, the Druids built huge sacred bonfires where people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins. They believed that by donning these disguises, they could fool the roaming spirits and avoid possession. The tradition of wearing costumes, which began as a protective measure, has continued into the modern celebration of Halloween. Today we dress up in a wide variety of costumes, not to ward off ghosts, but for fun and festivity. And so, the roots of our Halloween tradition trace back to an ancient celebration, a time when the living and the dead were thought to mingle, and when costumes served as a safeguard against wandering spirits. So, the tradition of Halloween started as an attempt to ward off ghosts, but how did it evolve into the celebration we know today? Stay tuned to find out. As Christianity spread through Celtic lands, it started to influence the celebration of Samhain, the precursor to Halloween as we know it. The Christian Church, in its quest to convert pagans, began to integrate some of the pagan customs into its own observances. And so the Church established two new holidays: All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. All Saints' Day, also known as All Hallows' Day, was set on November 1st. It was a day to honor all the saints and martyrs of the Christian faith. The evening before All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows' Eve, which over time was shortened to Halloween. Now All Souls' Day, commemorated on November 2nd, was a day to pray for the souls of all the departed, not just the saints. This was a clever way of incorporating the Celtic tradition of honoring the dead during Samhain by giving it a Christian twist. So, as you can see, the Christian Church significantly influenced the evolution of Samhain. They didn't entirely abolish the pagan celebration. Instead, they absorbed it, molding it into something that aligned with their religious beliefs. And there you have it. The ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, with its bonfires and costumes, was transformed by Christianity into a series of days honoring the saints and praying for the departed. And the tradition of souling, well, that was a precursor to a certain Halloween custom we all know and love, but we'll get to that in a moment. So Christianity transformed the ancient festival of Samhain into a more familiar holiday. But how did it become the Halloween we know in America? Halloween was not always a popular celebration in America. In fact, its early history in the New World is a tale of contrasts and cultural blending. In colonial New England, where the population was predominantly of strict Protestant belief systems, Halloween was barely acknowledged. The Puritans, with their austere views on frivolity and celebrations, saw little value in the holiday's ancient traditions. It was considered an unnecessary distraction from the serious business of life and faith. However, Halloween found a warmer reception further south. Maryland and the southern colonies, with their more diverse cultural influences, were more open to the celebration. Here, Halloween was seen as an enjoyable way to mark the passing of seasons, a night of merriment before the hard work of winter preparations began. But the true turning point for Halloween in America came in the mid-19th century. A wave of immigrants fleeing the devastating potato famine arrived on American shores from Ireland. They brought with them a rich tapestry of traditions and folklore, among which was the celebration of Halloween. The Irish immigrants, with their tales of jack-o'-lanterns, mischievous fairies, and the thinning veil between the world of the living and the dead, lit a spark of interest in the American populace. Halloween parties became common, with games, seasonal foods, and festive costumes. The holiday began to lose its religious overtones and took on a more community-centered, celebratory feel. By the turn of the 20th century, Halloween had become a fixture in the American cultural calendar. Newspapers and magazines began to feature articles and stories about Halloween, further popularizing the holiday. So thanks to Irish immigrants, Halloween became a widely celebrated holiday in America. But what about the tradition of trick-or-treating? The tradition of trick-or-treating is a relatively recent addition to Halloween. While the origins of Halloween stretch back over 2,000 years to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, the custom of children going door to door asking for treats only began to take shape in the late 19th century. During this period, Halloween parties became increasingly popular, not just for adults, but for children as well. These gatherings were often highlighted by games, seasonal foods, and of course costumes. However, the practice of trick-or-treating as we know it today was still not a part of the Halloween tradition. The concept of trick-or-treating is believed to have evolved from a practice known as souling, where the poor would go door to door on All Souls' Day, asking for food in exchange for prayers for the dead. This practice gradually morphed into guising, where children would dress up in costumes and perform tricks, songs, or recite poems in exchange for food or coins. By the early 20th century, guising had crossed the Atlantic to North America, but it wasn't until the 1950s, in the post-war boom, that trick-or-treating really took off. As communities grew and suburbia expanded, the tradition became a convenient way for neighbors to get to know each other while allowing children to participate in Halloween festivities. It was during this time that the phrase trick or treat was coined, with the trick part of the phrase being a light-hearted threat of mischief if no treat was given. Candy companies quickly seized on the opportunity this new tradition presented, and by the 1970s, Halloween had become the second largest commercial holiday in the United States, largely thanks to the popularity of trick-or-treating. So trick-or-treating, a tradition we associate so closely with Halloween, only became popular less than a century ago. It's a testament to how quickly and thoroughly new customs can become ingrained within our society, becoming as familiar and anticipated as the changing leaves of autumn. Today, Halloween is a major commercial holiday in the United States. The spooky season is now a billion-dollar industry, with costumes, decorations, and candy flying off the shelves as soon as the calendar strikes October 1st. But it's not just about the money. Halloween is a time for creativity, self-expression, and a chance to step into the shoes of someone or something else, if only for a night. From superheroes to mythical creatures, the variety of costumes available today is mind-boggling. And if store-bought isn't your style, there's always the DIY route. A cardboard box, some paint, and a little imagination can transform you into anything you want to be. It's a chance to let your creativity shine and perhaps scare a few unsuspecting friends in the process. Then there's the decorations. Homes transform into haunted houses, graveyards spring up in front yards, and jack-o'-lanterns line the streets, casting their eerie glow on trick-or-treaters. Speaking of jack-o'-lanterns, the tradition of carving pumpkins has its roots in an old Irish myth about a man named Stingy Jack, but that's a story for another time. Of course, we can't forget the candy. The sweet treats are a fundamental part of the Halloween experience, whether it's classic chocolate bars, sour candies, or those infamous candy corns. Halloween is a sweet tooth's paradise. But Halloween isn't just for kids anymore. Adults are equally invested in the holiday. Costume parties, horror movie marathons, and even elaborate haunted houses designed specifically for grown-ups have become commonplace. Halloween has grown into a holiday that everyone can enjoy regardless of age. Finally, with the rise of digital media, Halloween has also found new life online. From sharing costume ideas on social media to streaming horror films, the internet has become a new frontier for Halloween celebrations. So, from an ancient Celtic festival to a major commercial holiday, the history of Halloween is as fascinating as the holiday itself. And as we carve our pumpkins and don our costumes, we're not just participating in a fun holiday tradition, we're also part of a centuries-old story.